Good evening. Today is Tuesday, August 23rd, and a meeting of the Salem-Keizer School Board is called to order. This meeting is a work session along with an action item for the purpose of interviewing prospective search firms to aid in the search for the next superintendent of our district. So I'll take attendance. I think everyone is in attendance except for Second Vice Chair Guzman Ortiz, unless I'm missing her. I believe she plans to join, and Director Bethel is not here either. Oh, I think Director Bethel might be joining right now. With that, I'm going to read the welcome message. Buenas tardes, good afternoon, welcome and bienvenidos to the Salem-Keizer School Board meeting. At all times, whether we meet in person or virtual as we are tonight, we strive to be inclusive, respectful, and welcoming to our students, staff, educators, administrators, board members, and all community members. We welcome people of all genders, people of African descent, Black, African American, Asian descent, Arab descent, European descent, those who identify as Hispanic, Latinx, people indigenous to this land, and people of mixed and multiple descents. Languages spoken in our communities are welcome. Spanish, English, indigenous languages, sign language, Chuukese, Somali, Russian, Chinese, Vietnamese, and many more. People with disabilities, visible or invisible. People of all religions, believers in all faiths or creeds. Gay, lesbian, bisexual, heterosexual, pansexual, transgender, queer, two-spirit, or others for whom none of the labels fit. Survivors. Your emotions, joy, bliss, grief, rage, indignation, contentment, and disappointment. Your families, genetic and otherwise. Our veterans who proudly served and are currently serving our country, our elders, those here in this room, in our virtual room, in our lives, and those who have passed away. People impacted or displaced by the war have been displaced by the war in Ukraine and other violent conflicts. And yes, finally, we'd like to welcome the ancestors who lived in this land where we live and work. Welcome the spirits of the Santiam, Kalapuya, Siletz, and Grand Ronde, the natives who lived in this area before the Europeans came. Welcome and bienvenidos. Now please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't believe there are any agenda modifications this evening. And so we will move on to number 2 on our agenda, executive search firm interviews. So we are welcoming 4 firms tonight to share with us: Alma Advisory Group, McPherson and Jacobson LLC, Human Capital Enterprises, and Ray and Associates, Inc. We will interview each firm during their designated time slot, and a random selection was used to assign the time slots. As background, board leadership worked on drafting a series of prompts for the firms to address in their presentations. We then asked for questions and feedback from all board directors and revised the presentation prompts and developed a list of questions for firms to answer during their time tonight. The firms received the questions in advance yesterday, and we have allowed a half hour for each firm, a 15-minute presentation, and 15 minutes for them to answer the questions. For the sake of time, we've asked firms to be prepared to run through the list of questions themselves and to briefly summarize the question before answering. I see also that Director Guzman Ortiz has joined. Okay, so I think with that, are there any questions before I bring the first firm forward. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so our first firm tonight is the ALMA Advisory Group, and I would like for them to join and introduce themselves to us. Okay, welcome to ALMA Advisory Group. I think you've joined now. And I am the chair, Ashley Carson-Cottingham, joined here by a number of awesome leaders in the district and our board for Salem-Keizer. So with that, if you could introduce yourselves and begin your presentation.
All right, Ashley, thank you so much for the welcome. And we are absolutely honored and delighted to be here this evening. So my name is Kathleen Shiverdecker, and a proud member of the ALMA Advisory Group team, and just excited to engage in conversation with the board and share our thoughts about how we might provide support for this very important search. So I'll turn it over to Sylvia Flowers, my colleague.
Good evening. My name is Sylvia Flowers. I'm a member of the ALMA Advisory Group and would be honored to be a part of your search process for the next superintendent.
All right. And with that, Ashley, do I have permission to share my screen so we can go through our presentation?
Yes, hopefully it will work for you if you just click the button.
Okay, awesome. We will do that right now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right. And I usually ask people at this point in the process not to judge me on the number of tabs that I have open. So I'm going to switch to presentation mode. So thank you so much for that. Let's see. Okay. All right. Here we go. All right. So I am, as I mentioned, so excited to kick us off this evening and just begin our conversation about how the ALMA Advisory Group might be able to provide support for this incredible search. And we have been so excited to learn more about the Salem-Keizer community and just really compare the experiences that we've had in leading executive level searches for comparable districts. So I'll share a little bit just about ALMA Advisory Group. So we've been around for about 6 years, and our mission always is to create conditions for candidates to thrive. And our commitment is to our clients, and our very, very close second commitment is to our candidates. And we want to make sure that through a competency-based process that is designed to mitigate bias at every step of the way, we are creating the opportunity for candidates to demonstrate their very best work and for our clients to attract and retain just top talent that is going to stay with them and bring their very best into the roles that they are leading. So Monica Santana Rosen, our founder and CEO, sends her greetings from the air. She's en route to the East Coast this evening, where she's going to be facilitating a leadership retreat tomorrow. She is the progeny of two incredible people that focused their entire lives on creating education opportunities for their kids. And I will say from experience, I've worked with Monica now for about 12 years and have had the opportunity to be both a client and a member of this incredible team. Monica is trusted across the country with respect to HR leadership and executive search leadership and consultation truly at the very highest levels. So it's exciting for us also to be a part of this team and get to build this work around her incredible background. So she came from Chicago Public Schools, where she spent many, many years transforming that entire system in the third largest school district in the country and brings a lot of credibility to the role. The other advantage that comes with Alma Advisory Group is the team that Monica has so thoughtfully and purposefully built. So it's not just Monica's expertise that is coming along with our services. It is the expertise of a team that has deep networks and many, many years of experience in the public education field and nonprofit field. So the focus for our search, and this is exactly what you can expect, and I know we'll have the opportunity to share more about this as we get deeper into the presentation, but we know from what we've learned about Salem-Keizer that both in the district commitments and in your key performance indicators, community engagement and community empowerment are absolutely key. And I would say that this is a place where Alma Advisory Group absolutely thrives. An example that I will share around community engagement, and I know Sylvia will back me up on this, is when we led the superintendent search in Denver Public Schools. And I would say without hesitation, certainly we spent nearly 100 hours engaged in community forums and focus groups and interviews involving aspects of the community that often are not invited to provide their feedback in these types of scenarios. So that's parents, guardians, families, that's members of the business community, the faith-based community, and most importantly, to me, this is a bias that I have as a former middle school teacher and principal, is the student voice that played such a key role in how we engaged with candidates and invited them to bring their best thinking and their best presentations forward as we navigated that search. So a key part of that is everyone who has the opportunity to engage with candidates, and this is at the interview level, and Sylvia is going to talk us through the interview trajectory in just a moment, but training around the mitigation of bias in the process. Every step in our interview experience for candidates is designed to mitigate bias on the part of interviewers. We have very open conversations with those who get to interact with candidates to explore their biases, discuss how those impact our perceptions of candidates, and do our very best on a regular basis to acknowledge and mitigate those biases. Our interviews are incredibly rigorous, and we would look forward to you having the opportunity to connect with not only our former clients or our former districts that we've supported, but also with the candidates to hear what it's like from their perspective. But we have a multi-step process that is incredibly rigorous. And again, every single aspect of the interview experience for candidates is based on the competencies. The competencies come from the job description or the role description. And that's an area, again, where I feel like Alma absolutely thrives in working together with the board, with stakeholders to get input on what is most important for candidates to bring to the role. We feel strongly that if a narrative around a district or an organization truly reflects what it is that is most important for candidates to bring, then we're going to attract a diverse slate of candidates who are going to bring their very best to the opportunity to compete for this role. And then finally, what you can expect from us is a very comprehensive facilitation of the debrief process to make sure that every stakeholder who has the chance to communicate directly with and interact with candidates, mainly the board, is involved in a debrief process that, again, is focused on competencies, is focused on bias mitigation, and is openly shared so that we are engaging in a highly transparent process. All right, so let me turn it over to Sylvia. Sylvia is going to talk us through what a traditional or a typical superintendent search with our firm looks like.
Thank you, Kathleen. So as you will see from the timeline here, we typically anticipate the search process to be 12 to 16 weeks, about a 4-month search timeline. We start, as Kathleen mentioned, with intense and authentic community conversations. We really want to spend a lot of time getting to know not only the board, but community members that help to inform the design of the job profile and the job description. From there, we begin our recruitment strategy, which we will have an extensive list of posting sites and outreach messages and candidate sourcing and interest calls in order to generate a pool of candidates for the selection committee and community to consider. The next step is really the candidate conversation and selection process. So as Kathleen mentioned, we tend to design a multi-step selection process that starts with interviews by a member of the ALMA team. And then we build on the subsequent interview rounds to include the selection committee, the board, and the broader community up through the finalist round. We design our process around the competencies that are agreed upon in that job profile and job description creation process. So every step of our process is designed around the competencies for the role, both behavioral questions as well as real life scenarios that have been lifted up by you all, by the community as real life examples that may occur under this next superintendent's tenure. The finalist round will include broad engagement from a number of stakeholders, including the board, staff, and community members. One of the things that we do, and we can certainly talk a little bit more about this, is we cast a wide net in terms of inviting community members, staff, to participate in the interview process. What we like to do is have a nomination process where members of the Salem-Keizer community can nominate themselves. They can nominate other people to be a part of the interview process. We work with our board contacts to conduct a random lottery to select the interview panels, and each person who participates in the interview process will go through our anti-bias training and be a part of selecting questions that represent their particular stakeholder group. We also invite the community to submit questions to be considered in the finalist interview round. And once we get through the finalist round, as Kathleen mentioned, we will facilitate a debrief process where we support the board in finalizing their decision and planning for the offer and transition and induction of the superintendent. One of your questions was around how community input will support this process. And our goal is to communicate clearly and lead in a transparent engagement and search process where the voices of the community are included, uplifted, heard, and valued. And where that begins is really on the development of the job description and the competencies that are used to screen candidates throughout every step of the way. So we want to collaborate with you. We want to collaborate with the community stakeholders to explore those essential competencies that will empower the next superintendent to lead this district into the future. And that includes students, as you heard from Kathleen. We like to include students in this process. We like to include community members, community organizations, parents, teachers, classified staff, district office staff, in our outreach and our stakeholder engagement process. From there, we want to make sure that they're included in the interview process. One of the things we would also like to do at the beginning is to create a survey and ensure that if people are not able to attend any in-person town halls or focus groups, that they are able to give their feedback through the design of a survey. And then, as I mentioned, as part of the screening process, we would love to use these examples to help design some of the interview questions that that candidates will experience.
Yep. And Sylvia, just to add to that great description of the community engagement process, when we reach out to different stakeholder groups, and we depend a lot on our board partners to know which groups we need to reach out to, who are key community members that we know their voices will be incredibly important in the process. We open up the conversation. We want to hear what's real, that's happening in the community. And we know coming into Salem Keizer, it's an incredibly unique community. It is a community where the commitments are clearly defined. The key performance indicators are clearly defined. You've got a $619 million bond. You've got a clear focus on CTE. We were thrilled to hear, and this is a personal bias of mine that I'm proud to share, but almost a quarter of your students are involved in CTE programming. You've got a significant number of students who are identified as free and reduced lunch. We've got all kinds of knowledge that we would bring into those conversations with stakeholders, so we could frame our questions specifically around what matters most to you when we define the role for the superintendent, and then when we also define the interview experiences for them. And as Sylvia mentioned, we really take a lot of time and depend on a lot of collaboration to create the interview experiences that superintendent candidates are going to bring into the process. And those are many of those aspects are highly visible and highly accessible to the community.
All right. One of the other questions you submitted was around who would be supporting this search. First and foremost, our founder and CEO, Monica Santana Rosen, would be the lead for this search. I typically serve as her deputy on a search like this, working very closely with the staff to keep the project moving forward. Janae Harley is typically a project manager, and she's serving as the internal point of coordination for our team. Sydney Cabote is identifies as Native American. He has a master's in diversity, equity, and inclusion from Tufts University, and he leads the design of our community engagement process. He really brings an approach that invites people to share their truths and creates a welcoming environment in our community engagement process that ensures that people feel seen, heard, and valued. So we really appreciate the perspective that Sydney brings. Nita Lasapunko is sort of our behind the scenes person. She leads a lot of our candidate management and sourcing. She is doing a lot of research behind the scenes, identifying potential candidates for this role, and then she will also take a lead position in analyzing the data from the survey and summarizing a lot of the qualitative information that comes out of our focus groups and interviews in the community. And last but not least, Kathleen Shiverdecker truly provides a lot of support and does the lion's share of our writing. She does the writing of the job description and the job profile, and she will also lead the design of many aspects of the selection process, the interview protocols, ensuring that they're linked back to the competencies for the role.
Sylvia, thank you so much for that. And I would add to this incredible team, there will be those of us that you'll interact with or that the board will interact with a little bit more frequently. And then the backstage support, though, is truly unparalleled. And something that I will add about Alma Advisory Group, many of us come from public school district backgrounds and state education organization backgrounds, and equal mixes of human resources leadership in there. recruitment firms and having the opportunity to work with lots of people who do this kind of work. And what I will say about the backstage team, Janae and Nita being part of that, when we think about candidates, Nita in particular is one person that we've had the opportunity to work with who is absolutely an expert at identifying what we call passive candidates that may not know yet that they need to apply for the role, but based on the competencies that this team together defines, is able to reach out to them and create opportunities for us to connect with them and invite them into the interview process. So that's something that we are consistently excited about in superintendent searches, is our ability to build a diverse and deep pool of candidates.
So, Ashley, would you like us to just go through the additional questions that were shared with us?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, you can just sort of guide yourself through, and if you want to kind of summarize the question within your answer, we thought that could save some time.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, the first question was around attracting high quality candidates, including sitting superintendents, and of course, protecting confidentiality. And as Kathleen indicated, we do a lot of behind the scenes sourcing of candidates. We are looking for candidates who have a track record of demonstrating the competencies that the board and community have identified for this particular role. So because of that, we do tend to find diverse candidates, some of whom may come from expected places and some of them who do not come from expected places. So we, as Kathleen said, we might be talking to people who are not actively looking. So those folks are potentially putting their careers at risk if word gets out that they are looking for a new role. And so we take confidentiality of candidates very seriously. Because of our work in 4J, we understand the laws and the open records requests. And so we know there will be times when there are people present in the room when we are discussing candidates. We would want the board and staff to sign a confidentiality agreement so that we are, before we share any candidate information. We might also consider using some identifiers that allow us to discuss candidates openly, but without using their names in order to protect the confidentiality. Kathleen, would you add anything to that?
Yep. I would say that we, as we discussed earlier in our conversation, we are first committed to our district partners, and then we are a very close second committed to the candidates that we find. And we, again, beginning with the job description, we take that part of the process very, very seriously, and we are engaging literally from day one with our district partners around how we are creating the frame for how we're going to attract the best candidates. I would say that we use a comprehensive applicant tracking system that gives us the opportunity to push the position out to all of the places where we know that from experience that candidates will be seeking opportunities like this one. So we would also work closely with the district team to sort out the right places that we needed to make sure that the position was promoted. We use all kinds of media platforms and all of that to spread the word also about these kinds of opportunities, just to make sure that we are developing the deepest possible candidate pool that we can based on the competencies.
Your next question was around engaging equitably with each board member in the superintendent selection. Again, from the start, it is important to us that the board is aligned and unified in its approach for this search. So we understand that each of you brings your own experiences, your own perspectives to the role that you serve, but we do want the board to be aligned on what matters most for the superintendent role and for this community. So to the extent that we have that agreement at the start, then we can execute a process that reflects your unique perspective.
Yeah, and Sylvia, to that point, I would say we are drawn to boards that bring very diverse perspectives to the experience and to the work that they do, the incredibly important work that they do. And we welcome that. And we want to make sure that we're listening to people's perspectives. And to build on what Sylvia shared, we just care about aligning around what we want the search process to be. This is the board search process. We are just the facilitators of the process that we collaboratively design. And so moving on to the third question, we recognize that every school district, including Salem Keizer Public Schools, is in the midst of incredibly complex times in all kinds of ways. And so we have had incredible experience in dealing with complex political scenarios in the districts that we've supported. And something that we care deeply about is telling the truth. First, we want to hear the truth. We want to extract the truth from members of the board and members of the community. We use all of that information, again, to design an interview experience for candidates that represents what it is that they are actually taking on when they step into this role. We're not about sugarcoating. We want to make sure that candidates understand the complexities that they will be expected to navigate as they come into the roles. And that's where we will depend on your input, especially when we get to the part of the interview experience where candidates are engaging in performance tasks, where, as Sylvia mentioned earlier, we give them real world opportunities that the board is experiencing or that the district is experiencing that a candidate will have to show how they would respond to. We care not just about the candidates that show up great on paper and can deliver a fantastic interview. We want to know, what have you done in your professional experience? What examples can you bring that represent the competencies that this board and this community are expecting as you step into this role? And so we care deeply about creating experiences where the board will get to see how candidates would, how they would present themselves in these types of scenarios.
All right, let's see.
Next question, and Sylvia and I probably will have to compete to respond to some of these because we care so deeply about them. You mentioned that an important stakeholder group is the staff, and so some very specific examples that we can share from how we've engaged staff in the past. And Sylvia touched on this in the presentation, but we host interviews, focus groups, community engagement experiences. We don't follow the town hall model. What we do is invite as many members of individual stakeholder groups or broader stakeholder groups together so that they can convene in smaller groups to respond to the focus group questions that we have. And we have found, again, from experience, that's where we get the most authentic feedback, is when there's a smaller group that's highly facilitated by ALMA leaders, with people who are actively capturing notes, a structured interview type of process or focus group process where we invite people to respond to questions like, what are the most important skills and competencies that the person stepping into this role is going to bring? What matters most to you as a member of the staff for this person to demonstrate in terms of their leadership? If it's a parent group, what do you envision your students' experience to be in Salem Kaiser, and what will it take for this person to breathe life into that vision? So those are the types of questions that we ask. And I shared a statistic at the top of the call about the commitment that Alma is willing to make in terms of community empowerment, community engagement, and that is with families, with staff, in every aspect of staff, not just instructional staff, but it is with our facilities managers, it's with bus drivers, it's with our kitchen service workers. It is every single aspect of staff. We don't want to leave any corner uninvited when it comes to how we are inviting staff to share their feedback. It can be in one of those sessions, and it can also be through the survey that Sylvia mentioned, if they're not able to attend one of the sessions.
I believe we addressed the people who would be a part of the search. And so the last question, describe any pitfalls you've seen in the search process. I want to go back to an earlier comment. One of the things that works really well for us is it really helps from a logistics standpoint that we have one or two board members who are shepherding the process on behalf of the board with us. So those one or two people will meet with us on a pretty regular basis, sometimes once or twice a week, but at least weekly or biweekly at a minimum. In addition, we would want staff members, whether that's the board secretary or some point of contact in the district, to also be a part of that because of the many moving parts of community engagement and making sure that we're talking to all the right people. We would, of course, also like to meet with the full board on some regular basis as well, so that the full board is involved and aware of the process at every step. So we want to ensure that the board is participating in the decision-making at every step of the way. And then we can decide on the reporting structure that helps in addition to these meetings. Particularly, we would want to come back and report out on what we heard from the community. So we would want to establish some regular checkpoints where we would report back not only to the board, but to the community at large to ensure a transparent process. And again, we can't emphasize enough that this is a partnership. We need the district's help and in the outreach and engaging the community, because no one knows your community better than you do. And so we would look to both district staff members as well as board members to ensure that we are being as inclusive and transparent as possible. And, you know, the pitfall is that if we don't get the word out, then the community will not feel like that they were heard and that this was a transparent process.
And so, Ashley, with respect to time, we know that we're coming up on the end of our opportunity to connect with you, and we wish we had so much more time. But we can end with the fact that members of the Alma Advisory Group team have truly been designing these types of rigorous, competency-based, bias mitigation interview experiences for over 2 decades. And we found that when we came together as a collective, although Alma is, as an organization, a relatively young organization, we found that when we brought all of our collective experiences together in designing and facilitating these processes, they've really resonated at this level of the search process with districts in terms of finding superintendents and their cabinet level leaders. So we want to thank you again so very much for the opportunity to be here this evening, and we welcome any lingering questions or subsequent questions that you have following this very, very quick 30-minute presentation.
Thank you so much, Kathleen and Sylvia. We really appreciate your presentation and investment in and interest in our district. So I think that concludes our time, and we'll definitely be in communication with you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's great to see all of you. Have a great rest of the evening.
Take care.
Bye.
Okay, so our next interested organization is McPherson and Jacobson, and they'll come on at 6:20. So are there any questions, or do you want to just take a quick little break? I know we do have another 10-minute break after this one, but if anyone needs a break, feel free to take one.
While you're on a quick break too, I'm going to check in with Brian to make sure we've gotten the Spanish channel resolved. There was something going on with the Spanish.
Am I good to proceed?
Yes.
Okay, great. Welcome back, everyone. It is now 6:20, and we are pleased to be welcoming McPherson and Jacobson, LLC, into our virtual room. Hello, gentlemen. Welcome. And we look forward to your presentation. And then we've just been asking that the firm work its way through the questions that we submitted and try to kind of incorporate a recap of what the question is in your
So
answer.
we're hearing two feeds. We're hearing Ashley. We're hearing two feeds.
Welcome. Oh, were you watching it on YouTube?
Yes.
Sometimes that happens.
Oh, there we are. No, I'm sorry.
Okay. That's okay. We can hear you now on the Zoom only. Okay. Wonderful. So with that, I will turn it over to you to begin your presentation and introduce
Great.
yourselves to us. Thank you so much.
Well, welcome. Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to present to you and potentially the opportunity to serve your community, your students, and your staff. Let me just do a quick introduction of staff. Dr. Balderas, why don't you just do a quick introduction of yourself and your experience?
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I'm Gustavo Balderas, Superintendent of the Beaverton School District, previously at Beaverton, previously Superintendent in the Eugene School District, 25 years of education experience in Oregon, as well as superintendency experience in California and Washington State. A President-elect for the National Association for Latino Administrators and Superintendents, and also an executive board of AASA, the National Superintendents Academy. Happy to be here and look forward to the presentation. Thank you.
Dr. Grotting?
Good evening, School Board. Don Grotting. I've served 26 years as a school district superintendent in 4 different districts in Oregon, with the last one being Beaverton, where I served 6 years in that school district. I know a lot about the Salem School District, as well as the great programs and students that you have serving there, and glad to be here tonight.
Dr. Scott?
All right, good evening. Happy to be here. Mike Scott, Superintendent of the Hillsborough School District, starting my 14th year in that position. Also very involved with the Oregon Association of School Executives, as well as OSAA. I think one of the things that I would bring to the team is the deep understanding of how the position has changed over the years and understanding of the skill set required to be successful at this point. Very involved with coaching superintendents in the state of Oregon, and would be happy to be part of the team. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm Steve Lauder. My last district was Stockton Unified in the Central Valley of California, a district of high diversity and high poverty, 38,000 students, over 50 schools. So I think rather than go through a particular presentation like the packet, I mean, everybody has the packet, I'm sure, and everybody's had a chance to review the packet. What I want to do is to say, first of all, that any of the teams that you are interviewing tonight can do this job. But what I want to, I think, point out is the uniqueness, the difference that we bring to the table. One of our team members is not here tonight. Her name is Aida Buelna. She's a superintendent was a superintendent in California. Another one of our team who is bilingual, bicultural. We have 2 fluent Spanish speakers and who are bilingual who will be serving your community if selected. But I think the one of the key things here is our team has collectively almost 150 years of experience as superintendents or teachers in multiple states. We know what it's like, what it takes to become a superintendent. The key is, for me, and the key for our company is, this isn't about finding a person who can do the job. You're going to have many, many people who can do the job. They have the certification, they have experience. Our process matches people who have unique characteristics, skills, and qualities that match the needs of the Salem-Keizer community. To that end, we have placed more than 800 superintendents over the years. Over the years, in the last 5 years, 80% of the people that we've placed or the board has selected through our process are still in their current position. Over the last 10 years, 50% are still in their positions. And over the last 15 years, 40% are still in their positions. That is really an unheard of number when you look at the national average, 3 to 4 years. So there's something different going on in our process, and that is about the match. We find those individuals that match your needs and your qualifications, your criteria. The thing that we have done over the past, a third of our applicants have been female, a quarter have been ethnically diverse, and the board has selected a third of them have been female. In the last 5 searches that I've done this year, there have been 3 females selected, and 2 of which were individuals of color. You can see, if you have been following some of the things that we've been doing, we've done Kent and Issaquah, very large districts of, not quite as large as Salem-Keizer, but large districts of diversity and color. They are extremely pleased with our outcomes and certainly are available for recommendations. The other thing that makes us, I think, unique is that we're so confident in the matching process that we'll give you a 2-year guarantee. That means that if your individual, the person you select, leaves for any reason whatsoever, it could be a family reason, it could be a health reason, it could be anything, we'll come back and do this search for just our expenses. We're so confident that we're going to find a person that's going to meet your needs and qualifications. The other thing I think that's critically important for a school board is that you're not just buying a service. We provide a service, but you're buying a partnership. We become part of your team. We become your friends. All of us have been superintendents. We'll give you our cell phone numbers. We'll be available to you 24/7. If I don't pick up the phone immediately, I'll get back to you quickly to help resolve any concerns or questions. The process that we provide is very open in 2 ways. There's tremendous amount of community, staff, student involvement, number one. That really drives the process because that drives the characteristics and qualities, not a job description, but it's the kinds of things that people see that they need in their next superintendent that helps us find, sort, and vet your next superintendent candidates. And we'll bring you somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 highly competent, qualified individuals that you'll have an opportunity to select. I think the key to our process is, and I want to talk about just for a second about the pandemic, because during the pandemic, we were unable to hold public forums because of the restrictions on large gatherings. So we went to Zoom meetings. I was very concerned about that. But what I found is we actually have more participation in Zoom meetings because people can come and they can participate from their home, from their school classrooms, from wherever they are. It to me, I think it has opened the process up to far more individuals and has become far more democratic. We do this because this is our mission. It's about the kids, but in the end, it's about serving our democracy in our country and our communities. It's about ensuring that every child has the best possible education. And that requires that you have the best possible superintendent that stays and is able to produce and shepherd the best programs in collaboration with the community, the teachers, the staff. We need to hear from all of those individuals, and we do so in several different fashions. And I'll cover that in a minute because I want to talk about your questions. We have 5 phases. We establish characteristics with your support and the support of the community, your staff, your students, your administration. We hold those stakeholder meetings to gather information criteria and begin to develop the process that you want, because we have a protocol, but in the end, this is your process. If you want the process to be closed, it's not a recommendation, but some boards want it closed. We prefer an open and transparent process. The process that we have begins again with the stakeholders, staff, and community meetings. Some can be in person, some can be in Zoom, some can be recorded meetings where people are able to respond. And I think that because of the Zoom meetings, people have been able to respond at different times. It's not just a meeting where you either show up and you're there or you're not, you don't have an opportunity. Our process is such that we have more than 125 people like us around the country. So not only have a strong West Coast contingent, but we have people like us across the country. You will find that you'll have the majority of your applicants come from the West Coast, but you will have also highly competent, qualified applicants from all over the country. And sometimes even from outside of the country, people who have been doing things out of the country and are interested in coming back. We gather those applications. We vet those applicants based upon their successes. We do what we call 3D. We don't just call one reference or the 2 references that they have on their resumes. We call other individuals in their communities and school districts and ask them, talk to me about this individual, talk to me about their process, talk to me about how they handle conflict, how they handle adversity, how they have led people through troubling times. That allows us to bring to you people who have the skill set and qualities that you're looking for. We'll bring that group to you. We'll show you a list of all the people that have applied and tell you why, if you wish. Certain individuals were not selected to be brought forward to you, and we'll tell you why we've brought upwards of 10 to you. You'll be able to see them in a video. They'll be answering questions. You'll see their paperwork ahead of time. You'll be able to, at that point in time, select those for an interview process. Up until that time, when you select individuals, no one is identified in the process. We assure the candidates that their names will be held confidentially until the board has selected their finalists for the interview. And then they become very public. And we think that's a very good thing, because we want to put these individuals in front of your community, your staff, your administration team, in front of your community leadership, so that they will be able to provide you input on what's happening, what they think, how they feel that these individuals would fit into the community. And it gives the candidates an opportunity to basically shine and show off their skill sets, their ability to engage. After those community processes, the board has an interview. We recommend that you have at least 2 interviews, one with the stakeholder, student, staff, community-based interview team, and one with the school board. We also recommend that the school board have not just an interview, but they also have an informal dinner with the candidate and their significant other, because this has to be a match. Both people in a relationship, if there are, need to be comfortable with the community, with the city, with the state. We ask that you have a dinner with that person because that gives you a whole different view on who they are. We ask that not be scripted, It just is a social event so that the board can see whether or not they are a match for this individual, because your superintendent is your only employee. It's important that the community, the staff, the administrators have input into this process, but it's also important that they know that they're not voting on the next superintendent. They are providing you with information so that you can deliberate to the very best decision possible. Once the superintendent is selected, we'll work with you in what we call phase 5 to ensure that you have performance objectives for the first year, that everybody is very clear about what those are and what success looks like at the end of that point. I want to move on. I would like to ask Gustavo or Don or Mike if they have anything else they'd like to add other than the fact that we have tremendous wealth and depth of experience. Anybody have anything else you'd like to add at this point?
Steve,
Mike, go ahead.
Steve, I think I would just expand on the notion that we talked about at the beginning as we were doing introductions. With the number of sitting superintendents and the amount of superintendent experience that will be on this team, there really is that deep understanding of the work that is currently going on, the politics in Oregon, the context in Oregon, and I think that's probably unique to this firm. So again, the job has changed considerably over the years, and we've been on that ride all the way through it, and we've just got that understanding, the ability to support the candidate.
Mm-hmm. Don?
And I just add, Steve, with the group that's here, 3 of the superintendents, we actually meet with your sitting superintendent, Christy, weekly, and we really share and discuss problems, as Mike spoke about, whether it's the politics that are taking place in Oregon, the funding that's taken place in Oregon, sharing great programs. I know you're very proud and should be of your CTE program that's taking place, the music program in Salem, what you're doing in terms of equity with superintendent and the school board has made Salem-Keizer one of the leading districts, not only to be recognized in Oregon, to be recognized nationally also. So there's a close relationship with a lot of the folks that are here already.
Thank you. Gustavo?
No, I think it's all been said regarding the relationships and our understanding of Oregon, which is very different from the other 2 states I've worked in. And also just the relationships we have in this state, but also the national our national presence in terms of our understanding of other organizations and other leaders across the country that we're associated with as well, being who we are in terms of being larger school district superintendents or our association, not only the West Coast, but actually, Midwest and also East Coast. So we have a strong feel in terms of who is looking for work, and we'll bring you a strong pool of candidates for your consideration.
To that end, we'll advertise, if we get this position, with the Association of School Administrators, a national organization. We also, obviously, with I'll ask the Hispanic Latino Administrators Association and the African American Administrators Association. We have individuals of color who also have connections around the country, and will heavily recruit individuals that are competent and qualified that meet your criteria. I'd like to address some of your questions before we run out of time. You want to attract high quality candidates, including sitting superintendents. And I talked a little bit about how the process is confidential up until the point you make the selection for interviews of the finalists. The public's engaged in the process via meetings, Zoom, public meetings, etc. How will you engage equitably with each board member in the superintendent selection process? So normally we do this at board meetings or study sessions. However, we pride ourselves on being very flexible, and we are more than willing, if you choose, to set up individual sessions with board members and others throughout your district to talk about their concerns and their needs if you don't feel that study sessions or board meetings meet the needs that you have. I think you get to make the final decision on all the processes, but it's about teaming with the search firm. Third question was, our district is complex and is navigating political and community challenges. We can ensure that we'll bring you a strong pool because number one, we have the experience. Number two, we have the contacts. Number three, that we have a proven track record of finding the right candidates and having those candidates come and stay. It's a fit. We will bring you a broad selection of candidates of color, of male or female or other gender. We will bring you a large selection of highly competent, qualified individuals for your review. Stakeholder group. An important stakeholder group is your staff. That's your number 4 question. Ultimately, we need to ensure they have a voice in the selection process. We hold meetings with your team members, with your association leadership, with your rank and file. We hold them with your custodians, with your bus drivers, with your secretaries, with your administrators, with your teachers. And we have multiple venues for them to do this. And we ask them 4 questions that help us with the vetting process. The 4 questions are, what's great about the community? It helps us with a match. What's great about the district? It tells us more about the good news and the bad news, actually. The third one is, what are the issues the new superintendent is going to face as they come into the district? That helps us, again, define the people with the right skill set. And the fourth one is, what are the characteristics, the qualities, the skill sets, the experiences that a new superintendent should have to be successful in Salem-Keizer? That helps us with the vetting process. That helps us bring out the information that we need from all of your community members and helps us find the right fit. Explain the process you'll use to work with the community to identify competencies. I've just mentioned some of those things. Our process is tried and true. I mean, we ask those 4 questions and it works. If you would like us to do something different than that, we're more than willing to adjust and modify. As we said, this is your process, not ours. Although our process, if you follow it, works and works well. So it appears we have multiple people on our team that will engage with us. What's the role of each person and how do we work with the team? Well, the lead, I'll be your lead if you choose. I'm certainly capable and competent and willing to do that. And you'll have my personal cell phone number and my email. And as I said earlier, you can call me anytime. The other second lead is Doug Nelson, who is a longtime superintendent in Oregon who could not be here tonight as well. And the other people on our team tonight are here as team members and are certainly available as well to help us through this process. But again, we need a point of contact. I would be your point of contact 24/7. We'll need a point of contact from your side as well. Sometimes it's the board secretary, sometimes it's the board president, sometimes it's been 2 board members. It just depends on the comfort level and the need of the board. Pitfalls. There are many. Often leaks of confidential information can happen. It's difficult once that information is given out to the district. Once it's in our hands, we have control of it, and we don't give it out. That's the beauty of this. There can be no public records requests from us because we're not a public entity. And until the time you receive that information, it's confidential and safe in our hands. So there are disadvantages to the inside candidate. And we know you may have an inside candidate who is highly competent and qualified. The bad news for the inside candidate is they know you. The good news is they know you. You don't have that same level of information about the other candidates. You only see them in person, in videos, on paper. You don't have the same level and depth of knowledge and understanding of those individuals. So that works for and it works against any internal candidate. Sometimes the political process gets in the way of the search. Political influence groups sometimes try to influence a board. to drive the process toward a particular outcome or individual. That can be problematic, but if you stick with our process, you can avoid those pressures. It's important that stakeholders and community know from the very beginning the process, the entire process, that they're engaged and how they can be engaged. So that communication needs to be frequent. It needs to be in multiple venues. It needs to be out there so that people have multiple opportunities to engage in the process. It's important that those people know that they don't have a vote in the process, that it is the board's charter to select the superintendent, but that the board truly desires and wants input so that they can provide the very best decision possible on the next superintendent. And as I said, our process is proven, it's effective. We have experience, we have depth of knowledge. We've placed almost 900 superintendents and other highly ranking administrators over the years, and they come and they stay. We would truly love to be your partner. It is a partnership. This is not about someone or some of us providing just a service. We don't do this because we're going to make money. We do this because this is our calling. This is what we've dedicated our lives to, and we want to make a difference, continue to make a difference for public education, for communities, and for students. And with that, I think I'm done. Any of the other team members have a comment or last consideration? Seeing no one, what I'd like to say is thank you all for the opportunity. We would truly love to have the opportunity to serve you, your staff, your administrators, your students, and help you select the next superintendent going forward. Again, I think our hallmarks are our experience, our longevity, our success, and our guarantee. I would stand for any questions tonight.
Thank you so much for being here, all of you. It's nice to meet you in this virtual environment. You know our process. We're conducting 4 interviews this evening, and then we'll be back in touch with our next steps.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. We really appreciate it. And again, if you have any further questions, please let us know. And again, my mission is to serve children, and I know all of our team are the same. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for all you all have done for kids across the country.
Thank you. And thank you as trustees, members of the board, for volunteering to do this work. It's difficult work. We really appreciate the work that you're doing as well. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you. Bye. Okay, so the next up will be Human Capital Enterprises. We do have them starting at 7:10. I just reached out to our board secretary, Alice, a few minutes ago to see if we could maybe tee them up for 7. So that would still give us a little break now, but might be able to save us some time or give us more time for discussion during that part of our meeting. So why don't we at least take like 8-ish minutes now, and hopefully we can get them on for 7, if that works for everyone.
I'll have Alice reach out too if this one starts early, so they would be ready. Mm-hmm.
That'd be perfect. Thank you so much. It's now 7 o'clock, and we are pleased to welcome Human Capital Enterprises for your interview. Hello, Hank. I can see you.
Hey, good afternoon. Good evening.
Welcome. So just go ahead and introduce yourself, and then you can launch right into your presentation and then go right into the questions too, just sort of self-guided, and we have 30 minutes.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me and my team. I am representing our team tonight. And and thank you for, before we get started, not only thank you for inviting us to participate, but for the clarity and crispness of what you were hoping and asking us to present. So I know you have a lot of questions, board, that you want to get answers to, and I'm going to do I'm committed to answering all those questions in our 30 minutes together. I think I understand that Superintendent Perry will be my screen show helper. Am I right?
You're right. I'll get going on it while you introduce yourself.
Okay, fabulous. So Hank Harris, I'm the president of Human Capital Enterprises. I spent most of my career as an educator in the state of Oregon. I've been doing this work for the last decade or so. And I'm honored to be here tonight and chat with you a little bit about the work you are undertaking, as I'm sure you know, perhaps the most important body of work that a school board can take on, and you're doing it in a challenging era. And so it's critical that you hire whichever firm is the right firm for you tonight, that you hire and partner with somebody that you know and trust can get you through this important body of work to the other side, to your next great leader for Salem-Keizer. So let's talk a little. You asked about our values, and I'd like to start out with our values. And you can read this slide as I talk through it. One of the things that I would point out is our job is not to meet your expectations, but to exceed them. And one of the things that makes this work so rewarding to the firm and to me personally is the frequency with which we hear from board members and candidates following a process that, wow, this turned out so much better than we expected. We hear that a lot, and that is heartwarming. We hear it from boards that start this process with the nervousness that probably you are all like, how are we going to find the next great superintendent, and what will it be like, and how will that transition, and how will we engage our community? And we hear it from candidates too, who will say, wow, I've been in 3 or 4 different superintendent processes, and wow, yours is night and day compared to others in terms of the professionalism, in terms of the quality. And why is that? Like, why is it that we feel that we provide that service? I will say that one of the key differentiators for us is, so I come from an HR background. So I was a teacher, and I was a principal, and then I was the HR director for Canby School District, and then I was the executive director of HR for Portland Public, and then I was the executive director of HR for Bellingham up in Washington. And I come from the work of recruiting. I come from the work of managing events and processes and creating transparent and fair and respectful processes. And that is a big piece of the recruitment. And I do it in tandem with, certainly for a district like Salem-Keizer, with my superintendent colleagues. So Kathleen Rodden-Nord, who you may or may not know her name, but she is the co-lead on this, former superintendent, for very successful superintendent in Oregon for 18 years in Junction City, now very involved in COSA. So we are, and Jay Rallian, who's also, I'll talk about him in a moment, but in terms of the HR and superintendent dynamic, that's a really important piece to consider. I went into this business 10 years ago because I was a sitting HR director, and I was trying to get some support with searches. And I wasn't really satisfied with what I was finding from search firms, because they typically weren't run by HR leaders. So that is, I think, one of the differentiators that you'll see as you read through this. But we are deeply committed to a process of integrity, of follow through, of work ethic. We want to identify and entice great candidates to come to Salem-Keizer, so that you, board, have a selection of really top tier candidates, and nothing makes us happier at the end when you say, wow, we have lots of great people, any of which one could be great. The hard part is going to be deciding which one. Superintendent, if you would switch to the next page, I would so appreciate that. Thank you. A little bit more on our values. We do this work because we love this work. And although we are a national firm, and we're going to talk about our national reach as well as our local reach, we spent our careers, and in my case, most of my grown-up life in Oregon, and we're wedded to the success of the state. And certainly this next superintendent of the Salem-Keizer School District will have a significant impact, not only on the communities of Salem and Keizer, but of the state of Oregon, and that matters. We also anticipate that our relationships with you go well beyond the next 6 to 8 months. We maintain relationships with board members for years sometimes. And why? It's because we're partners in this really sacred undertaking that is among the most significant things that you will take on in your professional life. Next page, please. So you asked about our process, and it starts with high-level community engagement. And even before that, it's not written there, but let me actually say the very first step we do is we have a planning meeting followed by one-on-one meetings with each of the board members. We need to get to know each of you personally, your dreams and your aspirations for Salem-Keizer, and to develop that relationship. That's actually what we do at the get-go. And then we move into an extensive community engagement process, which is highlighted by what we call authentic focus groups and online survey and working to reach community. We're all putting out surveys all the time right now, ladies and gentlemen. If you're like me, you're getting, every time you stop at a hotel or at a restaurant or anywhere, somebody wants you to fill out a survey. And so surveys are becoming less effective in terms of like, how are you getting to make sure that folks will actually complete surveys? And this is a really important one. This is about your future leaders. So we want to work really hard with your staff to make sure that of all the surveys people can fill out every day that gets in your email inbox, this is the one we really want them to focus on, because this one really matters. And so we would like to, I would anticipate that we are going to engage between 500 and 1,000, hopefully more, individuals, either through the focus groups or the survey, to make sure that voices are heard, and particularly voices of communities where we don't always hear their voices. We recruit deeply in the Pacific Northwest, but we recruit deeply nationally as well, and multiple means of reaching candidates. So our process, let me just sort of clarify, starts with this extensive community engagement. And also, let me just add a piece that's not in there. So I'm just going to go back a little bit forward. The extensive community engagement yields a document that we call the leadership profile. That we will come back to you, board members, after we have done our deep dive with the community, and we will say, board, here is what we're hearing from your community in terms of what we are hearing them say that they want you to focus on in terms of the criteria of your next superintendent. Let's stay back on that previous screen, Dr. Perry, if that's okay. And you, board, will ultimately, you'll look at this document and you'll say, yeah, that maybe that reflects what we're thinking, but it's your document, board. It's the leadership profile. And so we, in a public session in a board meeting, will present to you our draft. You will do it as you will. You might tweak it, you might change it, you might add things, you might subtract things, because you, board, you are the decision makers in this process. And when we come out of that board meeting, we have a board-approved leadership profile, which then becomes the marching orders for the next thing, bullet points that you see. So then we begin our recruiting, strong nationwide network, strong Pacific Northwest market network, multiple means of reaching candidates. And we don't have a stable, as it were, of candidates that we want to put forth. We are going out to find candidates who match the needs of Salem-Keizer. And how do we do that? Partly it's through the word of mouth and through our organization. Our listserv reaches 44,000 folks, and we typically have about a 30% open rate. So immediately 13 to 15,000 people are going to know about this. But we also, that's a piece of it, and the advertising is a piece of it. And the biggest piece of it is reaching out to folks across the country who can turn us on to the next superintendent of Salem-Keizer. So we're on first name basis with many of your own former superintendents and cabinet level leaders. We're on first name basis with superintendents around the state of Oregon and the region. And so we get on the call, we get on the phone, and we say, here's what Salem-Keizer is looking for. And here's some really good news, is that in this crazy era that we're living in right now, Oregon, it continues to be a beacon where people want to come. I'm getting more phone calls over the last 12 months from folks who live in other parts of the country who say, you know what, I really want to be in the Pacific Northwest. And as somebody who loves the Pacific Northwest, I was always surprised that didn't happen more often. I used to think that everybody wanted to live in the Pacific Northwest, and that wasn't always true. And it's still not true. Not everybody wants to live in the Pacific Northwest, but an increasing number of folks are finding that they might be living in communities right now where they are not necessarily wanting to stay the rest of their lives. And a lot of folks see our part of the country as a place that they could put down roots and do some incredibly important work on behalf of kids with schools. So let's, one last piece on that page, I'm sorry, is the last bullet point. So we are very involved in process, so we want to make sure that this is a process that really works for your community. We recommend 4 rounds of interviews, which I believe is probably more than others. I can't say for sure, but that's a heavy investment in interviewing. We do an internal interview. We do 2 rounds with the board. We recommend a community stakeholder interview. So there's a lot of vetting that happens in that process. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that more as we go on. If we'll go to the next page, it would be great. We are not a firm that does 800, 900, 1,000 searches. That's not us. We are a small firm. We're intentionally small. And as the president of the firm, I am deeply involved in every search that happens. You've raised a question about who our team is. I'm going to just jump to that right now. So I've mentioned Kathleen and Jay. I will be your lead on this search. It would be my honor to do that if you decide to partner with us. Kathleen will play a critical role, as with Jay. I haven't mentioned Jay too much. I think I mentioned his name. So Jay Rallian is a native El Salvador bilingual educator from Southern California. He will play a deep role in the engagement with Latino communities, and he will also be will determine, but I expect that he'll be involved in interview processes as well and also help with the selection process. Kathleen will be a co-lead. Kathleen is, who I mentioned before, the former superintendent of Junction City. You will see her face from time to time. We have yet to establish exactly what that schedule would be. You will certainly be seeing me at probably all board interface meetings. So I'll be your key point of contact. Next slide, if you will. This is a sample of some of the districts in Oregon with whom we work. These are not necessarily all superintendent searches, although several of them are. We're honored that we just completed the Beaverton superintendent search. Dr. Balderas was hired into that. We did Portland Public, we did Medford, and many of these other districts. Some of these are cabinet level roles, not necessarily superintendent positions. Most of our work is in Oregon and Washington, and occasionally we dabble in other parts of the country, but our heart is very much in the state of Oregon. And as I stated earlier, either attracting folks who already know the region or attracting folks who are open to or want to come to the region that's our work. That's our work. Next screen, if you will. Just a little bit more about us. I think I've mentioned as a team, we've lived in many places, nationally and internationally. Our national network is strong. The first superintendent search I think I worked on was Houston ISD. We've worked on small districts like Sherwood or Sequim, Washington. And we are out there meeting new folks all the time who might be the talented leaders that we need to come to our state. Next screen. I put down, there's only one quote in this. I have a few more, but in the interest of time, I only did one. And I wanted to share a quote that really meant a lot from just last year in Beaverton. So we often talk about in the state of Oregon, how do we attract folks who are ethnically diverse? We all know that we don't have a great track record in the state of Oregon to do that. And in the next part, I think you have a question about that I want to go into a little more detail. And without really divulging information, I can't divulge. I can say that there were 11 candidates that were invited to first round interviews with Beaverton. And that board directed us to find outstanding, highly talented, racially diverse candidates. And we did. And one of the board members said this, and I think I quoted it verbatim. If not, it's pretty close to verbatim. And I put that out there because that can happen. That can happen and that should happen in our state. And there's reasons why that sometimes does happen, and there's reasons why that sometimes doesn't happen. So I'm going to try and attack those questions in the next part of the presentation. I think that's the last screen, Dr. Perry, other than just my email address. So thank you. Thank you for attending to my PowerPoint presentation. You've asked in the next 15 minutes me to go through, and I'm looking at the clock. It looks like I'm right on the 15-minute mark. You've asked 7 questions in 15 minutes, so this is like a speed round, but I know you've intentionally asked those questions, so you deserve answers to those. So I'm going to try and get through 7 questions. I'm going to talk a little fast. Is that okay, Salem Keizer? Can I talk a little fast?
I just want you to be mindful of the interpreters. I know we've packed a lot in. You don't have to read the questions out loud. Everybody has them, but if you just sort of indicate in your answer what you're responding to,
that's perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that guidance. Thank you. So the first question is about attracting high quality candidates. I really love the first question. I won't read it verbatim, but it's about attracting high quality candidates, protecting the confidentiality of candidates, and ensuring a transparent, inclusive process. It is probably the most important first question you're going to ask yourselves, board, after you decide who your search consultant is. So some of you may know and some of you may not know, there's kind of two approaches right now to superintendent searches. One is where you ultimately reveal the names of the finalists, and one where you don't. In Salem Keiser's most recent search, they did reveal publicly the names of the finalists, and historically, that's been a standard that is sometimes just considered normal. That's what everybody does, but it's becoming less and less common. I would say it's probably still happening in the majority of cases, but let me say it differently. Increasingly, boards are opting to not reveal the names of finalists, and that is something that we highly recommend for your board to consider. Let me be clear. We will be honored to serve Salem Keiser with whichever decision you make. But there is some high value in protecting the names of finalists. And here's the high value. Many sitting superintendents are unwilling to engage in searches where they know their names are going to be revealed publicly. And I'll give you a really quick answer to this, and we can certainly talk about this more if I'm your search consultant, we talk in planning. The superintendency is a really difficult job, more difficult now than ever before. If you are a successful superintendent in a community and your name is now publicized that you are applying for a job in another district, that's a very risky proposition for you and your home community because you might not get that job. And when you don't get that job, but your name is out there that you're looking elsewhere, it diminishes, it has to, it diminishes your ability. And in some cases for superintendents, that's too much of a risk to take. My community will throw me out if they hear that I've applied for another job. So we have to recognize that that is an important decision you have to make. We recommend that you consider that strongly. Either way, whether you reveal the names of finalists or whether you don't reveal the names of finalists, this has to be a community undertaking and your community has to be engaged. And there are multiple points along the process where community should and is involved. And I'll just quickly, in the interest of time, mention just two. One, I think I already spoke about, which is high-level community engagement at the front end of the process in terms of authentic focus groups and surveys to be able to bring forth this leadership profile that outlines what it is the Salem Keiser community wants in the next superintendent. And the second place where community plays a really key role, we would recommend that you have a community stakeholder interview team. That's a small group of community stakeholders who sign confidentiality affidavits, interview finalists, and provide feedback to the school board in the selection process. And a whole lot of communication that goes along with that so that people in the community know that their voices matter. More on that at a later time. Question number two is about engaging equitably with each board member and making sure that when the final decision is made, it's not a certain group or a certain individual. As I said before, it's absolutely critical, board members, that we get to know you, who you are, where your journey was that led you to be sitting on the Salem Keiser School Board, and what your dreams and goals are for the school district. We have to know that. We have to get to know you, and we will build not only a relationship with the collective school board, but with the individuals on the school board. One of the nice sort of bonuses about doing a superintendent search is it often is also, because you're putting in long hours together, particularly in the selection time. It's kind of a bonding experience for board members with each other, as well as with search consultants. At the end of the day, we are not looking for a superintendent to get voted in on a 4-3 vote. That is not what we're looking for. We're looking for an individual who 7 individuals can rally around and say, this person's going to be great. And maybe this person was my first choice. Maybe this person was my second choice. Maybe this person wasn't my first or second choice, but I can totally support that. That is what the ideal is. We want to land in a place where all 7 board members feel like this is absolutely a good decision, even if it's not their number. It's hard to get 7 people to say this is our number one choice. It happens sometimes, but 7 folks to rally around and say, you know what, the process was solid. We have a very strong candidate that we can rally around. I'm good with that. That's our goal and our anticipation. The third question is that the district, like all others, is navigating complex political and community challenges. And how do we ensure we can recruit a strong pool of candidates who can uphold equity and also navigating the political dynamics? Board, this is where we need your help. We can recruit folks who want to come to Oregon and want to be leaders. We can sell Salem-Keizer, and we can talk about what an incredible opportunity is to live in those communities, to be part of that community, to be part of the state capital. You get extra bonus points, right? If you're a leader working in Salem-Keizer, you have a much greater impact on the state if you're somewhere else. There's a lot to say about it, but here's where we need your help. You want to hire a really smart person, and a smart person is going to, as soon as they start thinking about whether they want this job or not, because they're going to start watching school board meetings and they're going to start doing their homework. And board members, you have to remember that you are on all the time. These board meetings are, as you know, they're public, and candidates are going to start watching them. One of the things I learned from my most recent Oregon search that I mentioned from last year, where we had a strong slate of diverse candidates from all over the country, is what sold them was not only the ability to live in the Pacific Northwest and do some of the great work that's happening in states like Oregon, but to work for 7 people that I want to work with. And it's hard to have 7 bosses. I myself have never had 7 bosses at the same time. Superintendents do, and they're going to watch and say, are these the 7 people that I want as my bosses? And that's where the recruiting is shared. So that's how we do that. The candidates are out there. There are people who want to come to Oregon and want to do great work in Oregon. And we want to make sure that they look and say, yeah, and I want to be the superintendent of Salem-Keizer. Next question is about, an important stakeholder group is our staff. How do we ensure they have a voice in the selection? Well, I talked a little bit about the community stakeholder committee, which I highly recommend that you bring in. It's a piece of the agreement that we can add in, and I highly recommend it. Staff is very, very important. So let me actually take a moment and describe what that committee looks like. So typically, let's say 14 individuals representing an array of stakeholder groups, right? So teachers, parents, students. I shouldn't limit it to, I should say staff, parents, and students form that group. And the board will determine the composition, not the names of the people on the committee. The board will determine the composition. So in a group of 14, you might have 4 parents, 4 students, 4 staff, and then you might reserve 2 spots for union leaders. We'll figure out the dynamic. You know, every district wants it done a little differently. I would say in general, your stakeholder groups, you might want to be equally represented, but you might not. Some districts sometimes want staff to have a larger voice. That group of 14, maybe 16, if it's important, we can talk about a larger group or a couple of groups. They will actually interview the candidates. Typically a few days before the board will interview. And I'm talking now usually at the final stages of the process. So if you've narrowed down your search to 3 or 4 finalists, now we engage the community stakeholders. And that's a really critical piece. And it's a place where staff and other stakeholders feel that they actually do have a say. Now, only 4 or 5 members of each constituency are going to be able to participate in that committee. But the way that you communicate that, the way that you present that, I don't recommend that you appoint 4 parents and 4 students and 4 staff, but I actually recommend a much more randomized with controls for making sure the diverse stakeholders are represented so that any member of the Salem-Keizer community can say, hey, I want to raise my hand. I want to be on that committee. Now, there might not be room for everybody who raises their hand, but at least that there's a path. And that path is fair and transparent, and it's not who you know, oh, it was a friend of a board member, oh, it was this person. That's a really critical part of the integrity and the transparency for your process. The next question is explain the process to work with the community to identify the competency. So I think I spoke about that. We will do a deep dive at the beginning of the process. We will learn Salem Keizer as best we can. We will engage with a number of stakeholders, and we will come to you with a draft leadership profile. And then, and I know I've said this a few times, I'm going to continue to say it, board, it's your decision. You are the decision makers. So when I bring that draft leadership profile to you with a set of criteria, you as a collective will say, okay, well, that's great. And Hank, I think maybe we should take out item number 3. And collectively as a board, you might decide yes or no, because it really does need to represent not only the community, but the decision makers. And the decision makers in this case are the 7 board members. The next question is about our team. I think I spoke about that. So it's myself, it's Kathleen Rada-Nord, and it's Jay Rallian. You will get to know all of us, and we will get to know you and work closely with you. And the last question is the pitfall question. So, here's what I would say. In a process that's run well, there shouldn't be a whole lot of pitfalls. Sometimes people ask if we will do a guarantee if it doesn't work out. And I say, you know what? Yes, we'll do it. But we haven't had any failed searches. We don't fail searches. We have successful searches because we hold ourselves and board to a tight process that's well organized and well run. So when I saw the question, I was thinking, well, what's a pitfall? So I'll tell you a pitfall that could happen, and we're going to take pains to make sure it doesn't happen. When we have our initial planning meeting, we collectively with you will develop a timeline. The timeline will indicate when are we opening and closing the vacancy? When are we having our initial screening? When are we having our initial selection? When is our first round interview? When is our second round interview? We decide that all up front. And then we schedule ourselves, board members, you schedule yourselves, and candidates, by the time they even get interested in this job, they already know dates, they already know what the calendar is. Now, once in a great while, a board member will say, hey, I just decided to take a family vacation, and it's right in the middle of the first round interviews. So that's a pitfall, ladies and gentlemen. That is a pitfall we want to avoid. Every board member, all 7 of you, must be at all the interviews. And please, when we calendar that, make sure that these are calendars you can live with, because changing that one date has major ramifications, not only for the other board members, for the consultants, the candidates who might have also, especially if they're coming out of town, blocked out time to get somewhere. So we don't find a lot of pitfalls. We are excited to work with you, and we think we could bring somebody, and big shoes to fill, Superintendent Perry, big shoes to fill. And we are eager to help Salem Keizer move to that next stage with their next great leader to continue a trend of outstanding leadership in the state of Oregon. And we hope we have the opportunity to serve you as your partners.
Great. Thank you so much, Hank. We really appreciate your presentation, the investment of time to tell us what your firm can offer. So thank you.
You betcha. You betcha. Thank you so much. Good luck with everything.
Take care. All right. So I think we do have Ray and Associates on deck for 7:40. So we have another 11-minute break right now. And so we'll just be back. Let's get back in 9 minutes. Thanks. Okay, thank you. Welcome back, everyone, at 7:40. And we are pleased to welcome Ray and Associates, Inc. for our 4th and final interview of the evening. I can see Steve Chestnut has joined us. I don't know if there's anyone with you, but go ahead and just introduce yourself and anyone who's with you. And then go right into your presentation. You should be able to share slides if you have them. To welcome Ray and Associates. Probably need to turn off your YouTube final interview of the evening. I can see Steve Chestnut has joined us. I don't know if there's anyone with you, but go ahead and just introduce yourself and anyone who's with you, and then go right into your presentation. You should be able to share slides if you have them. To welcome Ray and Associates. Probably need to turn off your YouTube final interview of the evening. I can see Steve Chestnut has joined us. I don't know if there's anyone with you, but Is your YouTube link still open? There we go. Okay, Steve, can you hear me now?
I can, yes. That was my fault. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It happens to lots of people. So, so go ahead and introduce yourself, then go ahead, right into your presentation, and then you can just, go through the questions at your own pace as well that we provided. We do have 30 minutes, and we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Good evening, Chairperson Carson, members of the board. I'm pleased to be here tonight. It's a pleasure to be with you. Apologize for the technical difficulty there. Of course, I had that reminder to turn off the previous YouTube, and I didn't do it. So hope things will go better from here on out. I'm speaking to you from Seattle, Washington tonight on a beautiful summer evening. I'm sitting outside, and it's gorgeous. So happy to be here. I understand Superintendent Perry is going to be advancing the slides. So thank you very much for that, Superintendent Perry. Is that correct? Or somebody is.
Let me pull them down. I can, but I didn't realize it. So let me pull them down.
As you know, Rain Associates was very pleased to place Superintendent Perry in 2014. And congratulations to her on a wonderful tenure in Salem-Keizer, and best wishes to Superintendent Perry in the next adventure in her career. So wonderful to be with you tonight. My name is Steve Chestnut, and I am very excited to let you know what sets Ray and Associates apart from the other search firms. I'm the only member of the team that's with you tonight, but if selected, we have 3 key team members that will be working with you, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about them. If we can get those slides going, I can show you some pictures of them so you can envision who they are. So hopefully we can do that. Just let me tell you a little bit about myself. So you can meet our team. And I was a superintendent for 27 years in Washington and Arizona states. My final full-time position was as Associate Superintendent and Executive Director for the Scottsdale Unified School District in Scottsdale, Arizona. I retired from full-time work 2 years ago. I've been working part-time for Rain Associates for the past year and a half. And some of my work with Rain Associates during that time is included writing candidate reports for the North Clackamas Superintendent Search. Last year, I was a team member for 3 superintendent searches in Arizona this past school year, and Dr. Ann Schultz is one of our team members. She and I were the 2 team members that completed the superintendent search for an educational service agency that serves 70,000 students in Washington back in January. My most recent search was for the superintendent position in Anchorage, Alaska, which was completed in April. I worked closely with Michael Collins on that search, and we were very pleased that the board was able to hire Dr. Jarrett Bryant from the Houston Unified School District, and that was a very exciting search to work on in very recent months. In my other part-time position, I'm an executive consultant for Learn Platform, which is an educational software company, and I'm responsible for superintendent outreach in 7 Western states. I actually live in Scottsdale, Arizona, but tonight I'm speaking to you from Seattle, visiting family, which is why I'm outside. Usually I have a little more of a professional presentation venue, but we're going to go with the garden outside tonight, and I'm happy to be here. The other members of our team, if we are selected, would include Michael Collins, who is our president. Mike has worked with Rain Associates for 5 years. He has served as our president for the past 2. Mike was an elected member of the Ohio State Board of Education for 8 years and a local school board member for 6 years before that. Mike lives in Columbus, Ohio. The third member of our team is Dr. Ann Schultz. She is currently the executive director of the Cherry Creek Academy Charter School in Inglewood, California. She was a superintendent in Wisconsin for 5 years and has worked with Rain Associates for 5 years. She lives in Denver. The thing that I think is very important to remember about our firm, and particularly about our team, is that we understand the importance of superintendent leadership. And we know what a crucial role that is in your school district, in Salem-Keizer, and we are dedicated to finding the right match of candidates for your school district. And we know that it's a leadership endeavor by the school board, and that crucial role of the superintendent is a very important leadership position. And so we're very passionate about working on that. Okay, next slide. One of our main characteristics as a firm is that we have a tremendous amount of experience. We've been in the business since 1975, done over, I think, 17 or 1,800 searches during that time. And we continually work on our process to make it better. And so superintendents, assistant superintendents who are out looking for work, we're looking for new positions, I should say, know to go to our website. And we get 28,000 unique visits a month as a result. And so we have a large footprint and a lot of outreach that goes with that because of our experience. Next slide. We believe in diversity in the superintendency. We've placed the largest number of women and people of color in superintendencies in America over the past 2 decades. 40% of our candidates, of our superintendencies that have been superintendents that have been placed have been women or people of color during that last 20-year period. And we take great pride in bringing you diverse candidates who are uniquely and well qualified for your position. Next slide. Our institutional values, our firm's values include inclusion, equity, and elimination of institutional racism in the superintendent search process, and we work hard at that. These are our organizational core values. There's a lot more detail on that slide, but these are the things that we believe in and act on in the search process. Next slide, please. We work hard to bring you an outstanding pool of candidates. We typically get 40 to 50 candidates in our searches. And because we are committed to candidate care, we have a good track record with superintendents who are looking for positions. So that pool is very important and we work hard at it. I will talk more about that as we go along. Next slide, please. We believe very much in board input because it is your search. We're very aware of the fact that it's not our search, it is the board's search. We start the process with individual board interviews so that we know your hopes, your concerns, your dreams for the superintendent position. And that's an important place to start. We ask the board to help us determine the stakeholder groups, the constituents that we will be talking to and gathering input from. The board determines the timeline and obviously the compensation for the new superintendent. And most importantly, I believe in this process is that the board finalizes the profile that we will use to attract excellent candidates and then make the final selection. And I'll talk more about that as we go along. Next slide, please. So that profile development is a crucial part of the process. Most firms talk about this, and it's very true. And as I mentioned, it includes individual board member interviews, stakeholder meetings, and an online survey. We have had excellent results with online surveys in the last several years, and we, of course, provide those in the various languages that are needed for your community. This survey that we use is a research-based survey that identifies the 31 characteristics that are most crucial in effective leadership. And we ask each person who participates in the survey, it's going to be staff, it's going to be community, parents, community members, students, anyone who participates, to identify their top 10 characteristics. The result is you get a feel for what each group, each constituent group believes is important. And all that information, of course, is shared with the board as they develop the final profile. We also conduct the, I already talked about the stakeholder meetings as part of that, and then taking all that information together, the board determines the final profile characteristics. Next slide, please. We believe in recruitment. We aggressively recruit top candidates. People that are doing good work often aren't considering other positions. We have 45 consultants nationwide, a diverse group of consultants, and we all have a number of people that we know would consider a good position. And Salem-Keizer is an outstanding district with an outstanding reputation, and that would be a good thing to talk about with people that are uniquely qualified that would match the profile. But we do reach out to people that match the profile that the board is looking for. Next slide, please. So that candidate pool is very important. As I mentioned, we screen the candidates according to the district developed profile. We do an extensive background investigation and internet check on candidates. And then we bring the top 8 to 12 candidates to the board for their consideration. We also ask each candidate to conduct a video that is a bit like an interview, except it's about 3 90-second answers, where you get to see the candidates in action. These questions are given to them with little warning. They can only, once they begin the process, they only get 3 takes. So you get an idea if this person is able to think on his or her feet and can answer professionally, which are important skills for a superintendent. So those videos are an important part of that process. And then, of course, the board reviews those as they select the first round of interviews. We recommend 2 rounds. Of course, it's the board search. And if you're interested in a 3rd round or you're interested in 1 round, we've worked with all different variations. But we recommend a initial round and then a final round of the top 2 or 3 candidates. When we reach the final round of the top 2 or 3 candidates, we engage a professional organization to conduct a complete criminal and civil background check. We don't want any surprises. Very important part of that process. Next slide, please. So the board selects the candidates. It's the board's search. The board reviews those top candidate applications, reviews the videos. The board finalizes the interview questions. We assist the board with that process, and the board selects the semifinalists and the finalists. Next slide, please. So we also assist in finalizing the search and beyond. Obviously, we help with final interviews and the final selection. We provide a 2-year guarantee on a superintendent search. If a superintendent either resigns or is non-renewed, we will come back and do that search for free. It doesn't happen very often, but on occasion it does. We also provide follow-up surveys as long as the superintendent is employed. Next slide, please. Let's go ahead and skip the testimonials there. Next slide, next slide. Just in summary, we have unique size and scope. As I mentioned, we believe in engagement. Let me get my notes here. We believe in engagement. That's one of our core values as an organization. We know that a search to be successful needs to be transparent, and it needs to involve the community, stakeholders, the staff, and the parents. And we are dedicated to that. In summary, we believe in diversity, equity, inclusion. We build those issues into our process and make sure that they are addressed. We have educational leadership outreach. I mentioned a little bit about this, that we have a lot of experienced associates that help us reach out to those candidates that match the profile. We provide candidate information, those in-depth background checks, and then we rely on the board's leadership in the process. We provide selection assistance with contract finalization, and our guarantees not only are a 2-year guarantee, but a 5-year guarantee that we will not come back and recruit your superintendent while he or she is succeeding in your district. Okay, that concludes the slide deck. And I know that the next part, you had 7 questions, and I'm happy to address those. Are we doing okay? Can everybody hear me? Okay, good. Wanted to make sure. You never know. Sometimes there's technical difficulties. So the first question had to do with how will we attract high-quality candidates, which includes sitting superintendents, and maintain confidentiality. You know, we have a very transparent timeline and process that the entire community will see. You know, it's on page 3 of our proposal, and it's pretty straightforward. And we believe in making that available to the community so that they know what the process looks like. And so we partner with you on making sure that the community is included and involved. We believe that stakeholder input sessions are very important, and sometimes the board chooses to have community members involved as part of the interview process. We also know that confidentiality is extremely important to our candidates. We do not reveal names of candidates until finalists are chosen. That is what we recommend. Now, it's the board's search. If you wanted to keep all finalists confidential, we would work with you on that issue. We believe that the superintendent is such an important position in a community that the community would like to know who the finalists are. And we have had wonderful success with that over the past several years. And it continues to be the most common way that superintendent searches are conducted. But as I mentioned, we will not reveal names until we have the 2 or 3 finalists. Second question, how will you engage equitably with each board member and make sure that there's not undue influence? Well, as I mentioned, we begin the process with individual board member interviews to learn your hopes and concerns about the search process. We work with the entire board in developing the candidate profile. So it's not just one person, that's two people that are directing what that profile looks like. We work with the entire board. And then we believe in weekly or bi-weekly meetings with the board president or some other board member that the board has designated as our contact person, which allows us to have good communication on issues that are coming up during the process and allows us to address those issues in a timely manner. The third question was, your district is complex, navigating political and community challenges. How will we ensure that we can recruit a strong pool of candidates? I really appreciate your equity goals and positions on equity that are very clear on your school district's website. I assume that those themes will come through in the new profile that you develop for what you would like to see in your new superintendent. And once we get that profile in place, it will make our job easier into reaching out to candidates that match. And I've talked about this quite a bit. And so we've had good success in that because the profile tells different candidates, do I want to apply for that position or not? Also, obviously, Salem-Keizer is an amazing school district in the state of Oregon. And, you know, that is a wonderful selling point as well. And there's a long track record of success educationally with school facilities, et cetera. And those kinds of things attract good candidates. The fourth question was, an important stakeholder group is our staff. And how do we make sure we engage staff? I spoke about this quite a bit. We engage staff through those stakeholder meetings. We work with the board to identify who those stakeholder groups should be. We typically meet with classified staff, elementary teachers, middle school teachers, high school teachers, building administrators, central office administrators, students, parents, community members. We run up to 15 or 16 constituent groups as part of a search. And those can be done virtually. Those can be done in person. They can be a hybrid. We've had a lot of experience with both, and we've had great success engaging staff in that process. Staff members are asked to complete the online survey, as I mentioned, and they are asked to identify what their work group is. So when the board gets that feedback concerning what teachers believe the characteristics for the new superintendent should be, that's easy to see what staff believes, whether they're teachers, classified staff, administrators, or whatever. And then we typically have a staff or community forum for finalists. Sometimes those forums are all together. Sometimes we have one for staff, one for community, one for administration, one for teachers. There's different ways you can do the forums for the finalists. And then we ask each of the participants in those forums to complete impression forms. And once again, they identify what a constituent group they belong to. All that information is shared with the board as part of their deliberation process. And so that's another way to gather input from staff. Fifth question. Explain the process you'll use to work with the community to identify the competencies required in the superintendent. So I've mentioned this several times. Community members are asked to complete the survey, and we've had wonderful responses from communities in recent years on completing those surveys, having them identify the characteristics that they would like to see in their new superintendent. And then, as I mentioned, they identify which constituent group they belong to. So when you're looking at survey data, as you're developing your profile, you have a good idea of what parents believe, what staff believes. Obviously, there's a lot of times some common things that they believe in and sometimes not. But those competencies then become part of your profile, which goes into the brochure. The recruiting brochure goes into the advertising that we do so that we can build that profile and get it out there. Question 6. It says it appears there are multiple people from your team who will engage with us. And what is the role of each person? I introduced the 3 people. I would be the lead person who would have weekly or biweekly contact meeting either by phone or virtually with the board president or anyone the board identifies to coordinate the search. And then when I work with Dr. Schultz, Dr. Ann is almost always on that call with me. So you almost always have 2 of us. And we're committed to that communication and working out those problems proactively. Michael Collins is our resident expert. And he, for example, when we did the Anchorage search, we did a hybrid search with them where most of it was done virtually. Some of it was done in person. And Mike was the person that went to Anchorage and helped facilitate some of the community forums that occurred for the finalists in that process. And so that's the kind of role that he plays. And in addition to that, we have 2 full-time administrative staff in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, who assist us and support us in coordinating all these details. And then the final question was, describe the pitfalls you've seen in the search process that the board should know about on the front end. And pitfalls can occur. And in my experience, it has usually been when board members either accidentally or even sometimes on purpose don't follow the process that we've agreed to. You know, the process is pretty well laid out there on page 3 in the proposal. It's pretty straightforward. We try to communicate a lot about it. We try to keep all the board members informed. But sometimes a board member won't do that, and that can get things off track. And so that's the advantage of having a weekly meeting. We can try and learn about some of those issues and try and deal with them as they come up so that they don't create big problems. But confidentiality is very important also. I have seen on occasion when a board member or even a staff member did not maintain confidentiality about an applicant. And doesn't happen very often, but obviously that can be a problem in a search. But we've had great success in using our timeline and process and, are always able to work through those issues as they come up. So that's my final answer.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. We appreciate you being here tonight, especially when you're out of town and somewhere glorious. We will definitely, communicate with you. We have the 4 firms that we've interviewed, and we're going to be discussing what we want to do as a board next.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you all.
Okay. We are ahead of schedule. Just good news, right? So unless does anyone need another break right now, or should we just launch another break? Okay. Should we come back would 5 minutes work? Okay. 8:10. We'll be back then. It's 8:10. We're back now. Next agenda item is public comment. We did provide an opportunity for public comment in written form. However, I don't believe any responses were received. We would have received them yesterday afternoon through the process that we indicated. I know we've received a couple different emails directly from a few community members, but not through that particular process, but that's okay. We appreciate being emailed directly as well. And then anything further that comes in that comes into our emails, you know, we review when we have a particular agenda item. So as a reminder to the public, when you want to reach out to all of the directors, there is an email the school board link on the website, which then gets it to all of us at the same time. So that would move us to number 4. And we have a 4A and B. And so 4A is us having the opportunity to discuss the firms and what we just learned tonight. And so we'd love to kind of throw it open for directors to give their thoughts about which 2 firms they feel that they want to move forward to the next step in the process and see if we can build some consensus. Are there any directors wanting to go first? Director Han.
Somebody's got to go first, right?
Yeah, thank you.
So kind of what I did, you know, when you're dealing with 4 very, very good firms, right? They were all very high quality firms, and I'm sure, well, at least I appreciate that they applied. So what I had to do was find things to eliminate people. That's how I do it. So I eliminated first Alma. I think they seem really amazing, but they have a really amazing price tag to go with it, and they're not local at all. And so I eliminated that group from my consideration. And the second group I eliminated was McPherson, and they are local, which is a plus. But they have current superintendents, and I guess I would want some fresh perspective in looking for a new superintendent. I don't want a recycled, you know, like a superintendent maybe that's moving from district to district. So kind of just a fresh perspective. And they also did not discuss, I believe they did not discuss individual board meetings. I could have that wrong. And they were all virtual. And I think a combination of virtual and in person is important because some people are going to be more attracted to one thing than the other. And so my first choice was HCE. They are from the Pacific Northwest. I like that they're going to spend 45 minutes with each board member because we all represent, you know, a diverse people in our community. I like the 4 rounds because I think we're going to have a hard time eliminating people. And it could take 4 rounds to get us to the right superintendent. And then, of course, my second choice was Ray and Associates. They aren't local, but they also talked about the individual discussions with individual board members. And I liked their additional guarantee about not trying to steal the superintendent back within 5 years of hiring somebody. So those are just kind of highlights of what I picked and who I picked and why.
Thank you very much. Thanks for going first. Okay, who's next?
I'll go.
Okay, great. Director Bethel.
When I was listening to all the presentations, I think, gosh, we have a pretty awesome selection of organizations that really want to step up for our community and find us the next best fit to fill the big shoes that we heard about for Superintendent Perry. But the first thing I did is I looked at their proposals and I went down each one and looked at their cost. And for the very first presentation we had with Alma, I was shocked at the sticker price because it's considerably higher than the 3 other proposals. And I feel like all 4 organizations can produce what we're looking for, but I want to make sure that we're spending money wisely and that we invest more money in the classroom. And the superintendent's a really important job, but I don't think we need to pay one organization, one consultant over $80,000 to do this search when the other 3 are offering us the same scope of work, if you will, for $20,000 or $30,000 or more less for their fee. So while I really loved their presentation and I felt like they were really engaged, I can't support their ticket price because I just think it's too high. And then I kind of went backwards. I really want to make sure that we are supporting our very diverse community. And I agree with Director Hayen that having an in-person option is really important for especially some of our communities of color that really only function best in person. We struggled through COVID to make sure we were connecting with those families. We need to make sure we're connecting with them in this really important position. So that eliminated group 2 for me. And when I was looking at the last 2, I think it's called, I couldn't get all the emails to open for me. The Human Capital Enterprises Today, his engagement in the delivery that he provided and the description of how their firm would go about connecting with the community, I think the time spent is what really sold it for me. I appreciated the quotes that he provided from a local school district on how they delivered. I thought that was really important. I particularly liked his slide titled "We Care," because I think one of the things that I have heard is since I've been on this school board, and one of our previous assistant superintendents said this often, is we really want to love up our kids and our community. And he uses that word love throughout his presentation in the slide deck. And I think it's important that we understand the amount of emotion that's going to come from our community and this board, frankly, in the selection of the superintendent. And I want to be able to work with an organization that I feel like we can connect with and be our hearty selves with and be just really present with. And I really felt like the human capital presentation provided that for me, and that he has experience as an HR recruiter director. I think it's a really important component to this process to understand what we're seeking, ultimately what we're buying, and what we're offering to the community. So my first selection, if I had to choose tonight, would be Human Capital Enterprises for this recruitment. And then my second would be the last group. Hopefully I get this right. I don't have it right. Hold on. I'm doing this from my phone. Super clunky.
Ray and Associates.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciated his presentation and experience and knowledge of our community. He started right out knowing that Superintendent Perry had been here for a while. So I don't have a ton to offer as far as my love of Ray and Associates, but I do love their sticker price. I think that when we look at their slide deck and they talk about the people that they've represented and how they've placed individuals from women of color across the board, I think that's really important that they focus on diversity. I love the slide deck. He didn't go through the inclusion, equity, and elimination of institutional racism. I think that's super important in this process. I think it's something that our community has struggled with understanding the base concept of and what we're trying to achieve through some of our equity work. So if I had to choose, they'd be my second. But overall, I thought we had really great options of all 4 tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Bethel. Who's next? Director Chandra Carey.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to kind of repeat some of the examples that Dr. Hein and Dr. Bethel mentioned. But moving forward, I ask myself what exactly we need. We really need to take it to the next level where we have a firm that can look for national level search, somebody who is fresh, who can take us to the level that we need to go. So that it is not just a simple continuation, because we really need to jumpstart and take it to a holistic level. We need a leader who can really bring different pieces of our community together. That way, we can help rebuild trust. So that's why I really think that Ray and Associate is good. Why it's good? Because first of all, they are an established company. They have done this. They also know us. Yet they have found a superintendent in Alaska, I believe. And Alaska is, Anchorage, Alaska, I've been there. It's a kind of a very diverse community in a lot of ways, with a lot of indigenous population, etc. They have their own strengths and challenges. And recruiting there would have taken them quite a lot of effort to bring somebody to Alaska. Everything is, it's a cost of living and the diversity in the distance. And especially when they could move somebody from Houston to there. And that's the kind of 2.0 jump start I was looking for to take our organization to the next level. So that way, they seem to have a national reach, and we can really start really rolling forward rather than just circling the wagon with its challenges. I like that the Northwest.
Point of order.
What are that human resources? What is that company called?
Director Avila, what's your point of order?
Director Chandiguri used a discriminating racist statement by saying circling the wagon.
Okay, let's refrain.
Okay, I apologize if that is how it got interpreted. What I meant was we really need to take it to the next level. We cannot continue to, work in just, day-to-day crisis after crisis, but we really need to take it. So I apologize. I didn't even realize that term was racist. So thank you for educating me about it. Till today, I didn't know, but I appreciate you telling me. Later, we can offline explain to me why it is racist so I can learn and grow from that. The second group is that HCE or human capital or whatever they call it. They seem to have a good system of engaging. They seem to have our Northwest, and they seem to have a way of really, I found the way that they are willing to, or at least they have history or track record of connecting with the directors, connecting with the community will help us. The first group, I was very impressed, but I'm really not sure how it is going to be translated into local connections. They are, women-led, minority women-led, and diverse thing. But to come from a big city like Chicago to Salem and to pull it off is going to be a little bit hard for me to imagine how they will get connected with local communities. And we have got 110 different communities. How will they, in such a short timeline, relate to all the people and get an authentic engagement? Even though they claim it will be authentic engagement. So I have my own concerns. That's why I will be a little hesitant to say. Otherwise, ALMA seems to be a very impressive organization. Now, as far as the second organization is concerned, they are all very nice people and active superintendent. But I would be a little hesitant to say that should be the way to go, because we really need to have a very healthy way to be objective rather than give an impression that, how will they help us move to the next level rather than being influenced by the state politics or the rest of what we are seeing in the state level with so much of polarization and distrust towards the Oregon Department of Education or the superintendents or the leadership. So giving us a level of objectivity so the community can trust in putting all these different groups together and taking us to the next level would be a concern that I will have, which would be the only reason why I would say I would be hesitant with the second group, even though they are very nice people individually. Some of them have been amazing. I've heard Dr. Baldassaro's presentation, etc. I have a lot of respect, but thinking in terms of our community, how do you help build back the trust and not give an impression that they'll be unduly influential in selecting the next superintendent who may not be able to bring different factions together would be the reason I would be hesitant with the second group. So the last two groups is what my vote would be, in the order of the last one first and the third one the second, and for these reasons. So thank you, Director Avila, for pointing out, and I apologize if any of those words, and later you let me know what it means so that I can be educated.
Thank you, Director Shandakeri. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it's a term that has been used in common vernacular for a long time, but harkens back to, times where white settlers were taking over indigenous lands, is my understanding. And so it has some pretty bad history, and good to recognize those things. I think a lot of us say things and then realize after the fact, and it's important just to have that awareness. So thank you for calling that out, Director Avila, and for your openness, Director Shandakeri.
Thank you. If I can follow up.
Yeah, please.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Director Chandaguri. And of course, the apology should go to our Native American communities. I'd like to start off with just going over like McPherson and Jacobson. I actually do really appreciate, and I think they would bring really, really strong insight because they know Oregon. They know our communities, they know our students. What I really appreciated about some difference between them was they're two fluent, bilingual, bicultural team members. We'll be able to hold in-person community stakeholder input sessions along with their online surveys for those who cannot attend these scheduled meetings. So I'm not sure what the reference was to only having online or virtual sessions, as stated by my colleagues. Of course, as well as Ray also said, Ray and Associates also said they do have a 2-year guarantee period, which not something that should be a highlight, but we'd want to assume that once we hire the next superintendent that they would want to stay here for longer than that. But anything could happen, like they said, any situation could arise. And me myself, when I moved to New Mexico, we only stayed for 2 years, unfortunately. So family was a big decision on that. They have a very strong understanding, right, of their process. It was really laid out. It didn't flow like the presentation as requested. However, they caught my attention. They actually surprised me from their paper to their in-person presentation or discussion, I should say. And I really appreciated what Stephen had to share about the pitfalls. And that was another key highlight, being honest. I think that they're going to be honest. They're going to be transparent with the entire process, with the community engagement, within the stakeholders, within our staff engagements. And I really like it. It's for the kids. That's their tagline right in the beginning. And I think we're all here, right? We're all here because we've all said at one point or another, for the kids, for the students. So I think they would be one of my two. As much as I liked the Alma presentation, I have to agree with some of my other colleagues as well. I was just really disheartened to see the price tag on that. As well, any four of these organizations can do this work that we're going to ask them to do. But we have to be physical stewards for our community, for our kids, and for our schools. So I would have to pass on them. And then I'd have to pass on Ray and Associates because I really appreciated the human capital enterprises going out to find candidates that match what we are going to build as our profile that we are going to look for in our next superintendent. Strong Pacific Northwest experiences with their national reach, right? Kind of what we want to do. I like that they also have a bilingual educator. As you know, having a minority majority school district and population with the number one being Spanish, I think it's important that we also have that we hire an organization that has team members that can easily reach out to our communities in that aspect. And I like their process. I really think as well it's going to be really confidential. It's going to be really transparent, really open, a strong community engagement, pulling in that input voice for their community members, bringing in our staff, connecting with our associations. And overall, I felt that they have a strong track record. So I would choose the Human Capital Enterprises and McPherson and Jacobson as my top two. Thank you.
Thank you. Second Vice Chair Guzman Ortiz.
I'm happy to jump on. I'll focus mainly on just my top two, and I really liked Alma's presentation, their response, their approach. I understand that my fellow board members have a concern regarding the price tag and don't want to minimize or oversee that. I also think it's important to acknowledge that this is a proposal and this is what they're offering, like what they're proposing for us, but there is still a process before a contract is signed. So I didn't want to discredit them entirely for that reason and wanted to focus on what was presented and the approach that was shared and the focus on the mitigating bias, the descriptions about, those anti-bias trainings, for example, for folks participating in the review process, focusing on the truth and wanting to hear from candidates in the community on, recognizing the politics in the community. And although they may not be from Oregon, they do have experience in the area as well. And I just didn't want to overlook that. And then as first choice, however, I really liked Human Capital Enterprises approach. One of the things that stood out to me was their emphasis on, Hank mentioned that the importance that this position and role will have also for the state of Oregon. And I think that is something that is really important to me and just really focused on the kind of that local approach, very community oriented, relationship based as well. So, and I also verbalized the authentic focus groups, authentic engagement, and acknowledge the survey fatigue. I recognize that surveys are a form of engagement in many ways, but there is also some fatigue because we've been in this virtual space. So there was some creativity and recognition of that I think is going to be important to make sure that we engage broadly and authentically with different partners and those relationships. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. First Vice Chair Hinojosa.
I'll be honest, I poured over all 4 RFPs multiple times, went over them over and over again. I think it's a clear highlight that you are getting older when you're I'm going to snuggle into bed and read some RFPs. So I really came into this thinking that the proposals from Ray and Associates and McPherson were my strongest contenders. But after this interview process, I felt like the engagement and acknowledgement that was brought forth by HCE of the work that is going to be done, similar to what Karina mentioned. I mean, Director Guzman Ortiz, about like finding more unique ways of engaging with the community because of the survey fatigue. But one of the key pieces of all the proposals that I was really concerned about was the fact that a lot of them did rely on online surveys, and we do have like a very large technological divide in our community. But I guess, you know, all that to just say, and not to belabor the point, is that I would say that HCE is my top choice, and also Ray and Associates, both because of their proposal and their previous connections with the district. You know, I don't know how many folks were aware that like Ray and Associates was the one that placed our current superintendent. So I think I like their track record, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Do either of our student advisors want to weigh in? Want to give you the opportunity if you have any observations you want to share. It's okay if you don't. Just want to make sure to include you.
I unfortunately wasn't able to make it for the first two, but I did like what I saw for the third and the fourth one. I noticed from the third one that they did seem to be a bit smaller and a bit more focused within our community, and maybe be able to make it a bit more personalized. But I also like the experience I saw from the fourth one and their track record, and they seemed like maybe a bit more established. So pros and cons for each, but I think overall seeing both these firms made me feel a lot better about picking a superintendent, because they both seemed to have a really good idea of what they were doing. So, but I think, yeah, and then Raylan saw all of them. So
thank you, Isaac. Raylan?
Sorry, I meant to raise my hand earlier, but I accidentally hit the clap thingy because it looks the same. So I clapped. So if I'm choosing, because Isaac said I was here for all of them, but if I were choosing my top two, I would say my number one would be McPherson. I really appreciated that they came in and they started with that they're familiar with the Salem area and that they had experience with OSAA. And that's really important to me because I do a bunch of OSA activities, and I feel that a lot of students within our school district rely on OSAA as to keep that connection between them and just like normal school and those activities. And so it's important to me that we find someone who is putting those ahead, those activities ahead of others things. I also appreciated that they kind of came out of the bat and were just and gave us clear, concise reasons as to why they believed that they stood out compared to others. And then my most important part about them was their slogan that it's about the kids, which I full-heartedly agree that it is about students, because that's why Salem Kaiser is here, is for our students. And then as for my second one, my second choice would be Ray and Associates Inc. And I did appreciate that they pointed out that they put Christy Perry into position here. And if they brought Christy Perry to us, I mean, they probably do a pretty good job. And then I also appreciated that a key point for them was diversity, which is important to a lot of students. I also thought that it was that they had diversity and then they had equity and inclusion on like a separate slide and a separate line brought up differently, and they didn't just lump them together. And then I also thought that it was I liked that they said that they were going to work with the entire board, which from my opinion includes Isaac and I know that we don't play as big of a role as the rest of you guys. But I think it's still important because unfortunately, most students can't vote. And so all of you guys were put here by voters. And so I think that it's important that Isaac and I are also included in this because we weren't really a part of the decision of putting all of the directors here on the board. And so keeping everybody in the board on the loop was important to me.
Thank you. Well, I think most everything I would have to say has also already been covered. I really appreciated all four firms' interests in this process, and they're all highly qualified. And for a number of reasons that have already been articulated really well by my colleagues, I think I would have to go with Human Capital and Ray and Associates as the two that I would move to this next round as well. But I really appreciated everybody's presentations, the passion, and the emphasis that they each have on doing right by public schools. So it would appear we have complete consensus on human capital moving forward. All 7 directors indicated that that firm would move forward to the background checks. And then the second highest would be Ray with 5 board members recommending that Ray and Associates moves forward to the background check process as well. Can we live with that, board? I'm seeing some head nods.
Yes.
Okay. All right, some thumbs up. Okay. It doesn't require a vote, but we did want to try to gain mostly consensus to then move those 2 firms forward. We'll do some reference checking, background check. Maybe I'm using the wrong term. Maybe it's reference checks that we're doing next. And then as far as the process we've laid out, the next thing we need to do is 4B, which would be a delegation from the board to the board leadership to do the background and reference checks. Oh, I guess I was using the right term. And then based on the totality of everything that we hear from those background/reference checks and the applications and the presentations, make the final determination and delegate authority to the Chief Operations Officer, which is Bob Silva, to conduct negotiations with the final firm.
Do you need a motion?
We do need a motion.
Well, I motion that we delegate this authority.
Is there a second?
Second.
Director Hine with the second. Is there discussion?
Do well. I really appreciate everybody's input. Having a good conversation today, and Mr. Silva, wish you all the best in this next process.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll take a vote. So all in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
It appears we have a unanimous vote. All right. We had put another meeting on the schedule for tomorrow in case we didn't wrap this part of our process up tonight, but I think that we've done what we needed to do, so we can go ahead and cancel the meeting that was on the books for tomorrow night. And we will then be seeing everyone in September. And school is starting just around the corner. So with that, thank you everyone for your time. I will adjourn the meeting this evening at 8:45 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
For more videos and information, go to capitalcommunitymedia.org and follow us on social media.